OldGuyTalks.com is all about being a better man. Join me on this kick-ass journey. Exclusive stuff for members only in the Old Guy Cave. Opt in now. This is information only. Consult with an appropriate professional before starting any program. Do not be stupid. You are responsible for your own shit. The old guy is a capitalist and not a socialist weasel. He will be promoting stuff here and may be compensated. You can rest assured the old guy only promotes stuff he uses. You may have different results. Since recording this series, Jay has moved his website to www.trtrevolution.com. You can follow Jay there and get more information on testosterone therapy and other anti-aging strategies. That's www.trtrevolution.com.
Hi, this is Oris the K-Man from www.oldguytalks.com. Here with Jay Campbell from Fab Fit Over 40. Now listen guys, this is important information. I have been looking on the internet to present to you some information on testosterone because I think that's a very important drug that men need to take on a regular basis. And while I was searching, a friend of mine had introduced me to Jay, and Jay has this book called the Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual. And I mean manual because it's a working document. This is probably the best, most concise source of information on testosterone. And I would encourage you, there's a link below. You can go to Amazon and order this, and you got to read it. And when you read it, take notes. Take damn notes, okay? Don't be just kind of skimming through it because there's lots of actionable information in this book. So Jay, tell me how you got to this whole testosterone thing. What's your journey here?
Sure. So great questions. And first off, thanks for having me on your show, Oris. As I told you before, I think what you're doing is awesome. There's a huge need in society globally, not just in the United States and North America, for men to be informed about this stuff. There's no reason that any man or woman for that matter should, not have optimal hormones as they age. But to answer your question, when I was 29, I started to literally suffer. I was so run down. I was like a really hard, type A sales guy, pressure, that kind of stuff. And then I was always pushing my body to the limits. I was an ex-professional basketball player. I was still playing competitively in rec leagues throughout Southern California. And something happened to me when I was 29 and I just couldn't recover anymore. So I was very fortunate. I went to a doctor who referred me to a very intelligent endocrinologist. Now I'll be 45 literally in 4 days. So this was back almost 17 years ago. And I was very fortunate at that time to have a doctor, again, just purely through PBO, who referred me to a really knowledgeable endocrinologist / regenerative medicine physician. And the guy was smart enough to measure my testosterone levels. Now back then, this is in like 1999, 2000, very, very, very few doctors had even a clue about how to measure this kind of stuff. And again, I was just very fortunate. So he measured me. I was like 276 testosterone at 29 years old, which on the total testosterone scale is like, wow, yeah, a geriatric level. And they see this, and we can talk about this as we get a little further into this interview, but this kind of low suppression of your endocrine system is seen in like special ops guys, people that put their body under massive stress and cortisol in their early 20s. So it was a rare phenomenon, but it did happen. And again, I was very blessed to see a doctor who recognized it. He said, hey, look, why don't we optimize your testosterone? I'll start you on a new testosterone improvement regimen and we'll see what happens. Well, we started. Within 3 months, man, I felt amazing. All the symptoms of like being tired and run down went away. And then I also started to experience like the cognitive improvement that comes with optimizing your testosterone. So my life massively improved. At that point, I was like, wow, what the hell is going on? I started researching this. I got heavily involved with my doctor in working with some of his patients. And really it just led to a passion of mine for the next 13 to 14 years in working with men, talking to different guys and studying it. And I just became a voracious reader of all the available research. That's the sad part. Oris, is that there is a lot of research. There's been a lot of research, but for whatever reason, it's kind of been suppressed in the mainstream. And we'll talk about that in a second. But
Sure.
was research out there. I really, really versed myself and immersed myself in it. And, subsequently at about 40, 41, I decided that I was going to write a book. I was with a couple of different guys. One of my good friends, Jim Brown, we discussed how we would format it, how we would take it to where we wanted to take it. And what happened, I think, at 42, it took me about a year to research and grab all the citations, is I started talking to some people. I asked a very, very profound legal mind, Rick Collins, who a lot of your readers who would know, he's the founder of the site Steroid Law. He's like the biggest performance enhancement attorney. And I asked him for a legal review of the book, and he said, Jay, I sent him the book. He read it. He said, Jay, your book's fabulous, but I can't give you a legal review. And here's why. And he then went on to tell me that, there's societal forces that, are against, testosterone. There's a stigma about it. It's demonized, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, even if I charged $10,000 and said, here's a legal review of your book, make sure you had safe harbor. There's no guarantee that somebody wouldn't say, hey, you know what? We want to go after this guy in the DEA, the FDA, whatever. So that kind of made me feel like, well, shit, I don't want to put this out there. I don't want to risk my family and my livelihood and my business and all that stuff. So went on hold. About a year later, still had the book. I sent it to Nelson Virgil, who I did not know at the time. I had read all of his books, and I said, hey, man, would you read my book and tell me what you thought? I didn't hear back from him for a month. It turned out that he was actually out of the country. He finally got back to me 6 or 7 weeks later and was like, dude, who the hell are you? This book is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's the bomb.
Publish the book. He's like, you have to publish the book. There's too many men around the world that, that need this book. And, so we started corresponding, and, the book was back on. And so subsequently I published the book in November of this year or last year. And as you said, a lot of guys have written some glowing reviews about it. And so far it's really helping me in positioning my message to society.
So, Jay, I want to kind of go back a little bit. You mentioned something about you were lucky enough to find the right doctor. And I've had this discussion with friends I've talked to about testosterone therapy, and they say, well, I'm just going to go to my primary care physician and talk to him about it. And my experience has been that's probably not going to turn out really well. Right. I know when I started testosterone therapy about 15 years ago, basically I got a rag of shit from my primary care physician about it. I'm going to get prostate cancer.
Right.
My dick's going to fall off. Just about all the stuff. But I do got to tell you, the funny story was probably about 5 years ago, I started seeing these little signs in his office for testosterone replacement therapy. Right. He's finally on board. I'm not sure if he's on board at the levels that are necessary. So let's talk about the doctors and how do you recommend picking someone that can help you properly?
So great question. Very, very difficult answer for me. I have relationships with the best, as I would call them, TRT prescribing progressive physicians probably in the world. There are not many, unfortunately, for men, and that's your biggest problem, and you kind of already intimated that. So how do guys find doctors? You're right. You can't, garden variety go to an average primary care physician and ask them to be treated on testosterone. Now, there are a number of doctors in North America now that are prescribing testosterone. They have absolutely no fucking idea what they're doing. They're doing it as a side income. They have farm reps that come in and say, oh, why don't you pitch, Androgel to your people, or, Axion, which is the underarm. There's a lot of different delivery systems of testosterone. We can talk about those. But the average garden variety, general practitioner who is prescribing testosterone to men literally has no idea what they're doing. And unfortunately, they actually make men worse. So, the answer is, number one, read my book. I tell everybody that. There are obviously other books. Nelson Virgil's book, Testosterone: A Man's Guide, is also a wonderful resource. Dr. John Chrysler's book, Testosterone: Recipe for Success, also highly recommended. There are other books that have written by very bright doctors, Morgan Thaler, Eugene Shippen, but their books are old, man. Their books are from literally the early 2000s, and they're not relevant to today. The technology has changed. The delivery systems have changed. Knowledge, of course. about optimizing men's endocrine systems has changed. So those books aren't as valuable as the other three. My book is the newest. It definitely has the most relevant and up-to-date research in it. So again, I would start with my book, and then if you had further questions, read the other guys' two books. But from there, once you then understand, because honestly, if you read my book, as you know, Orest, you're going to know more about this than 90% of doctors.
That's true.
So once you know, have the information, you have a good, sounding board and understanding of the topic, or a grasp of the topic, then you can get your blood taken, okay? And you don't have to necessarily rely on your local doctor to get your blood taken. As you know, you can get your blood done at any private medical lab, private MD labs, of course, Nelson's company, discountedlabs.com. I highly recommend that men go that direction first, because as you know, if you go to your general practitioner and ask them to pull labs and you're normally healthy, you're going to get absolutely fucked. They're going to charge you like $2,000 or some nonsense, even through a really good managed care benefits program, because you're quote unquote not sick. So that's not the solution. You go to the private medical labs companies. It's going to cost you $200 to $250. You're going to get a full men's comprehensive, what is called wellness or pre-TRT or even hormone optimization protocol panel. And then you can look at that, and then you can really find out whether or not you have, on the not on the symptoms, but on the measurement scale, a level low enough to qualify you to be a reasonable candidate. Now, I say all those things, and obviously, as you know in my book, it's not low testosterone or having, a testosterone deficiency is a symptomatic diagnosis rather than actual measurements on a piece of paper. But you do have to have an understanding of the measurements of a piece of paper to base for, going to a doctor and saying, hey, doc, I really think that I need to have my hormones optimized. Look, I did my blood work. Look what I'm testing. Because then that gives the doctor, whether he's informed or uninformed, at least a basis of understanding of saying, like, why is this guy coming to me saying, holy shit, he wants to have testosterone therapy, or he wants to have testosterone replacement therapy. So that's the best solution, rather than me telling you, like, well, here's some doctors that I recommend. Find out for yourself, take ownership of your health, and then go from there.
Okay. Jay, great segue here. Let's talk about some of the symptoms in men with low testosterone, because I think one of the things is that sometimes when you get sick and it's acute,
right,
you react to it differently than if if they kind of have a slow onset and you just kind of gotten comfortable to you kind of accommodated to the slow degradement that you're experiencing in your life.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the symptoms of low testosterone.
Okay, so great question. Let me give you a side from that. So I'll be 45 in a week, and I mean this when I say this. I have not been sick since I started testosterone. I've not been sick. I've not had a fever. I've not had, quote unquote, the common cold, the flu. I've had some sinus infection because I have allergies. I say that because the real truth is that if your hormones are optimized, and almost 90% of male society around the world is not ever until you go on testosterone replacement therapy, you will have a very strong immune system. You will have a proper, strong central nervous system. Everything will be functioning as it's intended. So the symptoms of low testosterone, most men are confused about the symptoms, again, because of the stigma and the demonization in the media of what testosterone is. Quote unquote, it's a steroid, it's illegal, it's immoral, all those things aside. The number one symptom of having a testosterone deficiency, or quote unquote low testosterone, is brain fog, okay?
Sure.
Being a guy who's 35, 45, 55 years old and literally getting to that point in the afternoon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, wherever it is for you, and you literally feel like the wheels have come off. You can't get through the rest of the day. You're like, what the hell is the matter with me? Okay. That's the number one symptom of low testosterone. Now, what do most guys do to mitigate that? Well, they slam some form of a stimulant. They drink 2 cups of coffee. They take a nootropic. They take Adderall. They take whatever garden variety nonsense that they've had some doctor prescribe them. But none of those things ever treat the symptom, which is, suboptimal hormone levels. And once you optimize your hormone levels, all the other symptoms, which are obviously, there is a sexual dysfunction, a minor. It's weird because whenever I talk to people, such as yourself, I always preface this sexual dysfunction of having low testosterone is literally the least issue. It's the smallest issue of all the other things. The other things are, again, the brain fog, the indecisiveness, okay, the hesitancy. When you have low testosterone, you're worried all the time. You're afraid of pissing off your wife or pissing off a coworker. You have you're just not decisive in how you live your life. You can't
you're
discretionary action.
You're a diminished person.
Yes, you're a diminished person. Great, very well put. And then also, obviously, physical strength. You totally lose stamina. You definitely have no energy whatsoever to come home and go to the gym and better yourself physically. It's just not there. Okay, that's like the last concern that you have, because when you have no energy because of low testosterone, you're not thinking about doing that. Even though if you're a bright guy, you probably know you should. So all of these things lead up to, like you just said, just a feeling of you're miserable. I mean, you have no incentive to continue to live your life, and it's very, very unfortunate, Orest, because the average man. Not the average man, 90% of men feel this. They go to their doctor, and what does their doctor do? Their doctor writes them a prescription for a sexual dysfunction drug like Cialis, Viagra, Levitra, and, which is horrible and in my opinion criminal, writes them a prescription for an SSRI inhibitor, which is a mood elevating or mood altering medication. And then these guys become junkies. So they become junkies on both of these medications, and guess what? They're not, again, treating the actual symptomology, which is the low testosterone, the suboptimal hormones, and they only get worse. And the worst part is the depression, the issues that they have, mentally and psychologically only get further exacerbated because now they're slaves to this medication, which controls, the neurotransmitters and all the other things. So it's a really unfortunate cocktail, or especially position we find ourselves in society today, that so many men are having to deal with this. And again, they don't even know that they have low testosterone because they went to their doctor and their doctor didn't diagnose it. So that's well, how could I have low testosterone?
Yeah. No, and not only that, but you see how people start getting frail. They get hunched over. They're losing body mass.
Yep. Well, and then they gain fat. Remember, because the lower the testosterone, the more the stronger the predisposition to store fat in the areas where you're likely to store fat because of the receptors that you have in those areas. So you see a lot of guys with low testosterone in their 40s and 50s that start having that protruding belly, the fat in the back, like you said, the hunch. That's all due to low testosterone.
Sure. Okay. So Jay, let's talk a little bit about how we take testosterone.
Sure.
And one of the things I'll refer back to your book. It was actually a good portion of it reflected my personal journey of different modes of administration of testosterone,
sure.
And having actually had different effects. And we can start off. Let's just start off talking about gels and creams. I'll tell you my personal story, and I'll let you dive into it. I was taking testosterone via injection, and I said, okay, well, let's try these gels and creams. And the way my experience was that the administration actually changed my personality. And my wife told me I was an asshole.
Right.
Stop whatever I was doing. And I was. It was actually. I found that was not a very good way for me to work on. So what's your? Let's talk about some of the administration ways.
Sure. So obviously, there's an entire chapter. Actually, 2 chapters in the book. The first chapter is what I would call the most inefficient or not the optimal solutions in delivery systems, and of course, the second chapter is on injectable and the various different esters. But it's a good point. When I also tried creams and transdermals, and this is a long time ago, I felt the same way. It's so fast acting. It doesn't optimize blood levels efficiently, and you do have the periods of you can, and again, I don't want to confuse people or scare guys that are watching the show, but it definitely can create the imbalance between testosterone and estrogen that would make you feel the way you felt. I also felt that. So just to run them down real quick, obviously, whenever I talk about delivery systems, I always say this caveat. I say that, listen, there are multiple delivery systems. There's, in my opinion, and it's obviously very, very, very written, very elusively written in the book. There are optimal systems, but nothing is optimal until a man, uses it in their individual life. So what is optimal for me and you may not be optimal for another man due to convenience, due to issues like needle phobia. Like, that's something that most men don't have, but for those that do, they can't overcome that. So if they want to use testosterone and get the benefits of testosterone, they have to figure out a usage of the transdermal stuff in a way that helps them. But just to run them down, there's creams and gels, which are transdermals. There's also buccals, which are lozenges. There are patches that you can put down in your lower leg area or scrotal area. What else am I forgetting right now?
Pellets. Yeah.
All of these delivery systems, again, written about in the book in mad detail, are completely inefficient. Okay. And they are inefficient because they have a lot of different side effects. They are inefficient from a standpoint of like their application. There's just too many issues that they all present to me. And again, very, very clearly elucidated in the book as to why guys should, if they can, based on their lifestyle, avoid them. And then, of course, the other delivery systems are being injections. Now, injections are definitely the most preferred, and that the number one reason they're the most preferred is because you can stabilize blood levels much more efficiently through injection than you can with the other systems. And again, the other systems, because of the way they diffuse through the body, there's a lot of different things that can come in that can cause them to not be absorbed and made bioavailable to the bloodstream as fast as they can be, or modulate via injection. So with injections, you have different esters. Now, again, I don't want to get too esoteric. All this stuff is in the book. But you have longer-acting testosterone preparations such as testosterone cypionate and testosterone anaphate, very similar biochemically, very, very similar molecularly when they break down into the body. And then there's also testosterone propionate, which is a faster-acting testosterone. And then the other one that is available through prescription is Nebido, or what is called testosterone God, I just forgot what the word is. But it's Nebido or Avid, Decanoid or something like that. But that is ultimately, when they perfect that delivery system, and they're nowhere close to perfecting it, I think that will ultimately be the optimal solution for men, because it's a one-shot type deal that lasts like up to 12 weeks. So nobody likes to inject themselves, even if you become really, really used to it, which obviously I have, I'm sure you have. Most men with testosterone successfully become used to it. If we could avoid shots, whether they're 1, 2, 3 a week or whatever, then obviously we would do that. So that system, that Aviv, that Nebido, at some point, I believe that will be, once they perfect it, and they're nowhere close to perfecting it, I believe that will be optimal. I mean, obviously, if a guy can only take one shot of testosterone and feel amazing, every 3 or 4 months, that would be great, right? That's preferable for all of us. But because it's not preferable right now, because it's one giant shot, and when it goes in, it doesn't metabolize or reach bioavailability equally in all men. So some men, it metabolizes in 6 weeks, and then they're 6 weeks without a shot, and they have low testosterone symptoms and they feel like shit. Other guys, it may metabolize a little bit slower, but there's still, most guys I know that have tried that feel like, hey man, as I'm jonesing for my next shot at the end of like next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, I feel like shit. So the answer really right now, best case scenario for men, is to utilize either cypionate, anaphate, or propionate. If you're lucky enough to have a doctor that will script you propionate, and there aren't a lot of doctors that do, there's some, then that, in my opinion, again, as written in the book, is optimal, because you can give an injection every other day. My doctor, Dr. Brett Osborne, I use cypionate. He won't script me propionate, and I do 2 injections a week. Now, we can get into the reasons why you inject and why injection protocols are, but
sure.
Cypionate and anaphate are the longer-acting esters, so they require less injections. They last longer in the blood level. You want to do 2 a week, preferably, versus 1. You can do 1 a week. Guys do 1 a week, but you want to do 2 because you want to be able to time the half-lives perfectly. If you do one shot, if you want to do 1 shot of a longer-acting ester, by day 5 and day 6, waiting to day 7 to get your next shot, you could, not everybody feels it, but you could have symptoms of low testosterone, because the ester has cleaved so many times its half-life is almost nowhere near where it was before. So the theory, it definitely works. If you take 2, so if you split up your dosage into 2 shots, you kind of time the peak better over the course of a 7-day average.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that's my personal protocol is twice a week. And I've been doing that for a couple of years, and that seems to do really well.
Yeah, that's the best strategy.
All right. So this is the first part in a number of interviews here with Jay Campbell. Want to thank Jay for taking the time today, and I encourage you to go to his website, FabFitOver40. That's 4040, FabFitOver40.com. Buy his book. There it is, the Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual. There is a link below to go to Amazon and get that. This is Oris the K-Man from www.oldguytalks signing off. Have a great day.
Since recording this series, Jay has moved his website to www.trtrevolution.com. You can follow Jay there and get more information on testosterone therapy and other anti-aging strategies. That's www.trtrevolution.com. Opt in and encourage other old guy assholes like you to opt in also.